Hey, today is episode 58 with Dr. B.
Welcome to the Living Beyond ADHD podcast. If you're looking for a fresh perspective and actionable steps on hot topics from focus to follow-through to self-management and more, you are in the right place. Welcome your host, innovative educator, coach, and psychotherapist, Dr. B.
Hey, ADDers. Do you have trouble inhibiting your impulses? Even though most of the executive function assessments typically look at the behavioral stuff, like blurting out, touching things that you shouldn't, cutting people off, and more, to me, there's so much more to understanding inhibiting than just the behavioral manifestations. What about inhibiting our thoughts, feelings? And by that I mean, do your thoughts and feelings seem to have a mind of their own and just happen uninhibited? Or do you have a say-so in what you think and feel, and when you think and feel, what it is that you do? I'm talking about the part of your mind that controls the censoring and the regulating aspects of your behaviors, thoughts, and feelings. I've expanded the idea of this executive function skill into the thinking and feelings realm, as well as looked at the flip side of inhibit. Instead of needing to stop yourself from doing something unacceptable, what about being so inhibited that you've shut yourself down from doing so many things that you believe are unacceptable to others? That you're not able to freely express yourself about your needs, boundaries, feelings, thoughts, and so on. To me, as well as to my Adventures in Achievement students, that's a really important aspect of Inhibit. So if you relate to anything that I've mentioned so far, this episode is for you. So let's dive in and start with the traditional descriptions of Inhibit and move on to some descriptions a la Dr. B. To inhibit is to restrain, to block, to censor, or to suppress. In fact, inhibitory control is also known as response inhibition. This is your ability to resist impulses and the ability to stop your own behavior at the appropriate time. You might be perceived as less in control of your behavior than your peers, than your friends. Maybe you interrupt others frequently or you finish their sentences for them. You might say things at inappropriate times or inappropriate things. Your timing just might be off. And people just might feel unsafe with you if you're intrusive into their personal space, and they might even feel disrespected by you. Going deeper, I see the importance of addressing this skill because either you develop the ability to inhibit your impulses behaviorally, as well as in your thinking and your feelings, or you're kind of going to be held hostage by them due to a lack of the ability to inhibit. If you grew up being overly inhibited in your family of origin, or schools, or circle of friends, and you've continued to live that way, you're living in a prison and not as a full expression of your true self. And if your thoughts or your feelings are like a runaway train and they take you wherever they go, they are running your life, not you. There's a time to inhibit and there's a time to not be inhibited, and we need to learn that balance in life. So where are you going to be able to address the traditional issues of inhibit, as well as the deeper ones that I'm referring to? If you have someone that you can do that work with, that's great. And if you don't, I hope that you'll consider allowing me to be that person for you. Just put your information into the form on my Adventures in Achievement website, and I'll call you within 24 to 48 hours from the time that I receive your information so we can chat and see if the program is a good fit for you. How much time do any of us have? Not all that much. Time just doesn't stand still for any of us. It has its own pace and movement forward, whether we're ready to move forward or not. I learned a long time ago that I wanted to live ready for the unfolding of my life, meaning that I took my life and the passing of time more seriously. And I didn't want to have to pass on any more opportunities because I wasn't ready and I couldn't say yes when I wanted to. How many opportunities have come along over the course of your life thus far that you weren't ready for, and you had to say no to. It might only be one or two, but if they were really important to you and you weren't ready, then I know that pain, because there were one or two in my life that I really wish that I'd been ready for, but I wasn't, and I had to pass. I can't turn back the hands of time because that time is gone. Any one of us might be offered a similar opportunity in the future, or we might not, because some doors close because it's a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity, and other doors, well, they open up again, but it's never the same. Point is, you need to consider living your life ready for the opportunities that are going to come your way so that you have a choice, rather than the choices made for you because you're not ready to accept the opportunity and run with it because you're not living ready. And it's not just about the skill and the strategies of Inhibit. There are so many more skills and strategies that are at the very core of what we need to be able to do in order to live a fully meaningful and successful adult life. There's no shortcuts here, or getting around the fact that we all need these skills and strategies so that we can inhibit or stop what needs stopping, shift, or make transitions from thing to thing, thought to thought, and feeling to feeling. Have emotional control, like being able to regulate ourselves in day-to-day life. Self-monitor, to notice the impact on people around us. Initiate, like getting started on whatever needs to be done when it needs to be done. And depending on our working memory. Plan, like a real plan with steps to take. Organize into a sequential path. Monitor tasks to know how things are going before we get to the end and see that it's completely wrong. And organize material things in our world, as well as the ability to manage yourself in time, follow through, actually complete tasks. Plus, there's all the emotional reasons that we do what we do to sabotage ourselves that need to be addressed if we're ever going to be able to live free of a derailing and limited life. Now, that's a mouthful and a lot to tackle. However, no need to become overwhelmed when there's a path and guidance to achieve all of this and more. You'll understand more of what I mean when we chat. Why are so many of us missing these skills and strategies? Besides what I've read in the literature about chronic illness and traumas of all sorts growing up, including the repeated traumatic experiences of growing up with undiagnosed ADHD and undiagnosed executive function deficit, it takes a toll. I see that life has changed in many, many ways, and some of these ways aren't for the better. There's an impersonal or a detached feeling in many social environments. Think about the places of influence as we're growing up. Our homes, which could be blended or original or single parent or grandparents. How about the schools, churches, synagogues, social organizations like Boy Scouts, Campfire Girls? How about sports, clubs, classes, and things like that if we participated in these places? We were learning whatever we were from these places and people, things that were modeled for us. Relationships, social skills, power, control, boundaries, personal rights, rules, and so on. We can certainly arrive in our adult lives with so many disempowering or damaging beliefs and behaviors, feelings, and ways of thinking about life and thinking about ourselves in general. I found that there's a lot of work to be done in undoing the disempowering stuff and then developing the empowering stuff. And it takes time, effort, energy, and practice, lots of practice. And the practice needs to be fun. In fact, there's a book that I read a while back entitled The Practicing Mind, Developing Focus and Disciplining Your Life by Thomas M. Sterner. He talks about mastering any skills or challenge by learning to love the process. And I agree with him. And many adults don't love the process. They just want to get to it, get what it is that they want to get, rather than enjoying or even relishing the experience or the process or the journey. I highly recommend that book. That concept reminds me of my years managing a wellness center and working as a physical fitness instructor. My mentor stressed the importance of the process of building strength and endurance, as well as the correct form. He told me that if I focused on and perfected my form and was doing the correct exercises for what I wanted to develop and achieve, then I didn't need to concern myself with the outcome, because it would happen as a result of my good form and correct exercises. I bring that up because if you focus on the process, and within the process, the skills and the strategies that you need to develop, and you give yourself the time and the space to make the changes that you need and you want to make, so long as you're on point with what you're doing and you keep going and you complete every step along the way, you will get the results that you're seeking. There are 4 key words to help you: simplify, small, short, and slow. If you're reframing your journey and weaving your transformation into your day-to-day living experience, then it's okay that the process is what you focus on, because this isn't a race to get there, wherever there is, into the next week. It's about getting where you want to go and being able to sustain or maintain what you achieve for the long term, rather than the short term. It's like dieting. You can drop 10 pounds quickly, but can you maintain that 10-pound loss long term? Most people can't, and don't because they didn't learn what they needed to learn in the process. They were focused on the goal of dropping the 10 pounds, and then because they couldn't keep what they achieved, they had to repeat it over and over again, and it still didn't stick if they aren't focused on perfecting their process and whatever they need to learn in order to maintain for a lifetime. Summing up, it's important to focus on the process rather than the outcome or the goal. The goal is for direction, so you know where you're headed. Then get into the process a step at a time and take your time to ensure that you learn what you need to learn and don't shortchange yourself. If you don't, you're only going to have to circle around and relearn what you could have learned the first time. Today's episode is about the executive function skill of inhibiting and the strategies I see as relevant for you as an adult living with ADHD or executive function deficits, as well as offering you hope, real hope. How much time do we have? Not much. So let's get to it. Today's 3 important points a la Dr. B's definitions are: what is behavioral inhibiting and how you can develop it? What is thinking inhibiting and how you can develop it? What is emotional inhibiting and how you can develop it? And an extra piece on being overly inhibited and needing to release yourself from that prison.
This podcast is sponsored by Pure Potential with Dr. B. You can head over to drbarbaracohen.com and find the podcast transcript, grade-free content, plus information on programs and services, including the groundbreaking Adventures in Achievement online coaching program and one-to-one services with Dr. B. That's drbarbaracohen.com.
Now back to being an adult with ADHD or executive function challenges in today's world. There can be so many reasons why your challenges weren't given a name or officially acknowledged until later in life. And since you can't go back in time, you have to move forward with what you know now and learn whatever it's going to take to get your life working optimally for you. I actually have 4 stories for you today with action steps as well as a favorite quote of mine. Are you overly inhibited or overly concerned about what other people are thinking about you or what you're doing or not doing? Have you restricted yourself or shrunk down your life so much that you don't even recognize yourself? Are you experiencing depression or anxiety that hasn't let up in years, despite everything that you've done to help yourself? And so your world is getting smaller and smaller. If you relate to what I'm saying, my question is, what's holding you back? What beliefs do you have about holding yourself back or inhibiting your behaviors, thoughts, or feelings, so much so that you feel anxious or depressed? I've heard things like, No one would like me if they really knew me. Or I'm just too intense. Or I'm just not into what most people are into, and so on. If you're overly inhibited, no one's going to get to really know who you are anyway. They're only going to get to know the person who is held back. If the people you know have told you that you're too intense, what they didn't include was too intense for them, which is different than you being too intense. You won't be too intense for many people, just people other than those who feel overwhelmed by you. If you didn't have or don't have much in common with the people you currently know, then perhaps you need a new circle of people around you to interact with. You might want to think back to a time when you were a kid, before you started to inhibit yourself or feel inhibited, and remember how you were then. Did you have more energy? Were you more passionate or more expressive than you are now? Were you enthusiastic about most things and ready to try new things and learn? I think you get the point. If you can remember how you used to be before you were inhibited and you liked how you were then it's time to find your way back to that state as it fits in your life today. It's quite an adventure, and I'm here to help guide you if you want my help. So let's transition to some stories now and action steps. Our first story is about Ellis and what behavioral inhibiting is, and some action steps about how you can develop it. Ellis was in his mid-40s, and he had been pushing people away with his behaviors for most of his life. He gave advice freely without being asked and didn't understand why this upset people. Thoughts and ideas came into his mind and came out of his mouth without pausing to consider if they should be shared or not. He didn't have any brakes on his behavior, or at least he didn't use them or know how to use them very often. Ellis had been diagnosed with ADHD years ago and was taking medication that seemed to help his ability to focus effectively, but did nothing for his inability to inhibit. Since there are no skills in pills, his medication might have been helping a little with Inhibit, but without the skills and strategies that he needed, Ellis was like a runaway train. He hadn't been diagnosed with executive function deficits or disorder, so he didn't yet know about the bulk of his challenges coming from his executive function deficits and not so much from his ADHD. If the professional that diagnosed his ADHD had informed Ellis that since he has ADHD, he also has executive function deficits, and that they're not the same, at least that's my perspective. They're related, and just about everyone who has ADHD has executive function deficits. These are deficits that are skill-based deficits, and they can be learned, even as an adult. Ellis was curious about what executive function deficits he had, because he wanted to learn what he was missing and fill in the gap. He asked to be assessed for executive function deficits, and he took a simple assessment that provided the answers he was seeking. He was compromised in about every single executive function area that was assessed. And specific to Inhibit, he clearly had problems there and no skills or strategies to know how to inhibit what was expressed. He was impulsive, he rushed through things, he was easily distracted, and he had problems waiting his turn or waiting at all. He wanted what he wanted when he wanted it, plain and simple. He also lacked maturity, which is common with adults with ADHD or executive function deficits. A search for what's out there about maturity revealed the following traits and information. Self-awareness, being able to look at yourself through the eyes of a neutral observer, without judgment, just the facts. Self-control, resisting what might be detrimental to your short or long-term goals or well-being. Accountability, understanding what a great responsibility it is to be a human, and understanding the consequences of your actions, and that keeping your word to yourself and to others and doing what you say you'll do is important. Humility, that you treat others fairly and respectfully, and you don't place yourself in a one-up position. Self-acceptance, the ability to make peace with who you are today and continue to strive to be better with each passing day. Gratitude, seeing the wonderful things in your life and the benefits and value of both the big and the small things that you have or experience. Compassion, you feel greater concern for others and wish well for those around you. Being other-centered, determined to do what you can to help and celebrate the success of others and improve their welfare, not just your own. Open-mindedness. Life isn't black and white or right or wrong, and you're open to many ideas and opinions and don't judge those that might think differently or live differently than you. A sense of wonder. This returns when you're open-minded, being able to view life as incredible and beautiful. You can see the miracles of nature and the complexity of your own existence. Optimism that's tinged with realism. The ability to be optimistic and still realistic. You maintain a positive mindset for the best possible outcomes. Flexibility. The ability to bend as you need to and accept the unpredictable in life is part of the deal. Seeking how things can happen differently than you might have thought originally. Resilience is the ability to bounce back and not get overwhelmed by life events, solutions-oriented versus problems-oriented. Patience, having the ability to continue working for and towards what you want in life, as well as gracious that others may not move as quickly as you want them to, and allowing that to be okay. Honesty, first with yourself and then with others. No mask and no need to hide from who it is that you are. No need to hide from others. Here's another source that indicates 7 qualities of a mature person. The ability to keep long-term commitments, even when they're no longer new or novel. You can do what's right, even when you don't feel like it, because your feelings don't run your life, and you can delay gratification. You're secure in your sense of yourself, your identity, and you're not shaken up by flattery or criticism. You think of yourself less often and others more often with a spirit of humility. You live by your values and you know what they are, and you have principles in place that guide your decisions. Rather than being reactive to life options, you're proactive and decisive. Your decisions are based on character and principles, not feelings, because feelings are ever-changing from moment to moment. You live a life of gratitude where you appreciate all that you have, all that you are, and you can see the big picture of life. You know how to prioritize in order to accommodate your needs and the needs of others who are dependent on your ability to consider their needs as well as your own. Living as a teachable person rather than rigidly, and willing to seek the help of others as you need. Realizing that the more that you know, the less that you know, and the more questions arise, and that's actually a good thing. One of the things that I conclude from these 2 examples is that maturity isn't acting like a 2-year-old and being determined to do what you want to do when you want to do it, regardless of the consequences or the impact on you or others, and that no one gets to tell you what to do or when to do it. The absoluteness of no one, that also includes you, meaning that you don't get to tell yourself what to do either. And this definitely creates its own set of problems and obstacles, which you may already be experiencing. Back to Ellis. It wasn't difficult to understand why he felt so bad about himself and was filled with self-doubt. Despite really trying to make good decisions and be a responsible adult, his track record spoke for itself. People used to tell him that seeing is believing, and that since they didn't see him controlling himself, they felt that he just didn't care and felt entitled to act as he did. This couldn't have been further from the truth, but no one believed him. I'm wondering what you think about these qualities of being a mature person, and if you see yourself as being a mature person. Some background facts about behavioral inhibiting. Individuals with inhibitory control challenges often require additional structure in their environment in order to maintain more appropriately controlled behavior. This means working for someone else, where the structure and rules and expectations, they're clearly stated. Or if you're an entrepreneur, having someone else set up the necessary structure, rules, and expectations, as well as facilitating your accountability. Distractions need to be limited, whether visual, auditory, or anything that could pull your attention away from the task at hand, such as shutting down your emails and turning off your phone. Tasks need to be clearly defined and perhaps even simplified so as not to overwhelm you. Steps need to be clear and doable to facilitate lots of wins and build self-esteem, self-confidence. Redirection or course correction is often needed until you learn how to do this for yourself, and you might need someone to help you with this. Stop and think strategies such as counting to 10 or waiting 5 minutes before reacting are simple and generally doable. Developing inhibit habits, skills, and strategies takes time and practice, and it does manifest itself if you keep going and you follow through. If you relate to Ellis's story, your action steps are: focus on determining which manifestations of the ability to inhibit are weak for you. Follow through on developing the skills and strategies to inhibit what you're missing. Ask yourself lots of questions daily to determine your progress and what you might need to adjust to do even better. Ask yourself questions like, what was I challenged inhibiting today? What did I successfully inhibit today? How did I handle the challenge of inhibiting today? How did I handle my emotions during these challenges? What did I feel about the experience or the outcome? Am I making any assumptions about inhibiting and my ability? What are some fun and creative ways to cue myself to inhibit? What can I learn from today's experiences? Could I have done anything differently? And if so, what? Where could I improve for the next time? How should I adapt or change myself moving forward? And self-management of how you feel about inhibiting behaviors that are destructive or disempowering to you and changing them to empowering ones. Reflect on whether or not you're addicted to the drama that you've lived with for so many years and maybe even afraid to let it go. How do you feel about letting go of that drama? Let's transition now to our second story about Darla and what thinking inhibiting is, and some action steps about how you can develop it. Darla was in her mid-70s, and she wasn't diagnosed until her late 60s. She had lived most of her life with the noise of her mind and just thought that was everyone's experience. She always had something to think about, and she didn't mind so much during the daytime because it was interesting and entertaining to her. However, she couldn't shut off her mind in the evening when it was time to get ready to sleep, and this had been a problem for years. Her mind still seemed to have lots to share with her, a never-ending stream of thoughts and ideas. Since she was kind of a loner, she didn't know that this wasn't everyone's experience until she was chatting with a new friend one day about going to sleep at night and how it takes her so long to get to the point where her mind has exhausted her and she just can't stay awake any longer. But until she reaches that point of exhaustion, she just can't disengage from her cognitively active mind. Her friend Eve was intrigued because that wasn't her experience at all. When it was time to go to sleep, Eve got into her bedclothes, pulled down the covers of her bed, crawled into bed, and drifted off to sleep until it was time to wake in the morning. Darla didn't know that her ADHD could be the reason, or even a deficit of her executive function skill of inhibiting. Instead, she wondered what was wrong with her and why she couldn't go to sleep at night like Eve, because it sounded like such a lovely experience. Determined to better understand and solve her sleeping challenge, Darla talked to Eve again and a few other people, searching for clues about what others did that she didn't do or couldn't do. Once she got that information, she felt confident that she could figure out what she needed to do to solve this long-time problem. After all, she was using her strength of thinking. Some background facts about thinking inhibiting. Thinking serves many purposes, and some of them aren't obvious. You might be constantly thinking and unable to inhibit your thinking because it's keeping you from focusing on something very unpleasant. And so you think about all kinds of things other than that unpleasant thing. Or you might be thinking as a way to keep your mind stimulated and active and focused. Or you have a strong mind, but a weak will in terms of going into action. So you do what you're able to do well, and you avoid what you can't. However, your thinking may lack what your will needs in order to go into action. Specific steps, for example. Being able to inhibit and regulate your thinking so that you think about what you need to think about when you need to think about it is the goal, unless you give yourself permission to just think in free form, to imagine, create, fantasize, daydream, and so on. That's important too. Inhibiting distracted thinking and staying with on-point thinking is critical to being able to achieve your goals. However, it's also critically important to be able to understand the purpose of your uninhibited thinking and what it's serving so that you can know what the true nature of the challenge is. If you relate to Darla's story, your action steps are to focus on the true purpose of your uninhibited thinking and determine the important gift that it's providing, as well as where in your life it's a problem. Follow through on acknowledging the good of this strength and where it hinders you. Determine when you need to inhibit your thinking and course correct because it's necessary in many areas of your life. Self-management of how you feel about knowing that your runaway trained mind has been running your life instead of the other way around. Sit with your feelings about learning new skills and strategies to inhibit your thinking when that is needed. So let's transition to our third story about Tess and what emotional inhibiting is and the action steps about how you can develop it. Tess was in her mid-20s and had very little control over inhibiting her emotions. Something happened, she reacted to it, and that was it. She'd been like this since she was a kid, and she never learned to change it. In fact, she never knew that she could. Tess had no idea that it was the meaning that she was giving to what she experienced that was driving the intensity of her emotions, as well as the non-conscious associations that she was making with past experiences that had lacked closure. All Tess knew was that her emotional responses on a regular basis would flood her, and she didn't know how to pull the plug on those experiences or stop the intensity of her emotions. Her desire to participate in fun, normal activities began to wane. She became afraid of flooding or feeling out of control emotionally. None of her friends seemed to have this problem, and so she didn't know who to ask for help or what to do to help herself. She wanted to set goals that would stretch her to grow, but she became overwhelmed at the thought. She wanted to attend lots of interesting events, but found that she had such strong emotional reactions when she was attending these kinds of events that she felt uncomfortable doing so. Tess felt life very deeply. It's an important part of her personhood. She just didn't know how to inhibit her response to maybe 50% of what it was and make it possible to interact as others did and not become overwhelmed. Some background facts about emotional inhibiting. One way to think about your emotions is as emotion, or energy in motion. If you're fluid in your response to your emotions, then they're just passing through. If you freeze in the face of them and become rigid, you could feel overwhelmed and like you're getting hit with a huge wave of energy. Your emotions are what you think they are, and not automatically good or bad. Anger is a good emotion, and it delivers an important message about something being wrong. If you inhibit feelings of anger, then you'll miss important information to guide your response. Anxiety is a good emotion, and delivers an important message about something not being safe. If you inhibit feeling anxious, then you'll miss important information to guide your response there. Joy is a good emotion and delivers an important message about your happiness. If you inhibit feeling joy, then you'll miss important information to guide your response to feeling happy. You can develop your ability to inhibit your emotional responses by first differentiating between the message and the response. Get the message and then work with your response. You can ask yourself insightful questions about you and the circumstances like, why do I do what I do? How is this significant? What's happening here? Why is it happening? What does all this mean? If you relate to Tessa's story, your action steps are to focus on developing your ability to seek balance in inhibiting your emotional responses after you've understood the message that they carry for you. Give yourself time to reflect, to ask yourself questions, and to consider what you learn. Follow through on differentiating between the message and your response to the message rather than becoming the emotion and perpetuating it. And self-management about how you feel about living in a state of fluidity and not taking on the emotion in order to live the lesson. Remember, no matter which stories you identify with, you need to cultivate a practicing mindset and come to look forward to practicing something every day that is moving you toward your destination. Whether you need to practice developing behavioral or thinking or feeling inhibiting, or all of them, you have work to do. And mind you, the work doesn't have to be hard or boring. It can be fun and playful. The idea is to make the process enjoyable, so you will practice every day and even look forward to doing it. It's not enough to know the steps that you need to take in the process. You can get that from a book or other informational product. You need the support, understanding, and a sense of community to help carry the load that we all sometimes feel. You might even need someone to walk beside you step by step to help guide your actions and follow through so you stay the course and you achieve your outcome. We each require explicit or clear instructions in order to advance, and can do so provided that we have removed the obstacles that prevent us from moving forward. You have to pay attention to what your daily outcomes are from the actions that you take. It's the only way to course correct quickly and not lose a lot of time moving in the wrong direction or getting stuck because of emotional obstacles. And again, if you don't have a place to go for support and knowledge about how to transform your life into what you've always wanted, I recommend you put your name and your contact information in the form on the Adventures in Achievement site so I can reach out to you right away and set up a time to chat about your goals, your challenges, and whether or not this program is right for you. The link to the site is in the episode resources. If this all sounds like a lot of work, perhaps it is. However, it doesn't have to be unpleasant work. In fact, it can be fun and playful if you approach it that way and you give it those types of meanings. I've been playing with these skills and strategies for years now because I had to learn them just like you do. I knew that I'd be more inclined to stick with learning them if I could make this a fun experience for myself, which I did. And I've continued to be a student of my own life, as I hope you will be of yours, and stick with it until you've achieved your mastery and the happier and more productive life that you want. And if you want to be part of an online community of listeners to my show, be sure to reach out and friend me on Facebook so I can invite you into the Living Beyond ADHD community. I look forward to getting to know you there and helping you in whatever ways that I can. And if you want more than just the Facebook group, put your name and information on the form on Adventures in Achievement so I can reach out to you and we can chat about your needs and whether this program is right for you. Enrollment will be available to you after we chat on the phone and determine if this is right for you. I don't open enrollment to the public with a link because I want to make sure that the adults that enroll in Adventures in Achievement will all work well together. We are definitely an amazing and unique community, so don't miss out on this great opportunity to get your needs met. I've included an executive function assessment when you enroll and the opportunity to discuss the results with me in our initial one-to-one appointment. I've remodeled the program so that we're focusing on you developing the executive function skills and strategies that you're missing in our working workshops, in addition to the weekly coaching that you receive as a member of Adventures in Achievement. And of course, you have access to the forum 24/7 and to me there helping you 6 days a week. A favorite quote. Napoleon Hill said, "Desire is the starting point of all achievement, not a hope, not a wish, but a keen, pulsating desire which transcends everything." So the question I have for you at this point of our journey together is, do you know what your greatest desire is? And are you driven to do whatever it's going to take to manifest your desire? I hope so, because this is your life we're talking about. And you know that it wouldn't be a complete episode if I didn't talk about celebrating your wins, big and small, since they're such an important part of my philosophy. And since what we pay attention to grows, paying attention to what's right instead of what's wrong helps to generate more of what's right. And when you acknowledge and celebrate your wins with a full heart of appreciation and authenticity, you are giving yourself a priceless gift. Please, don't shortchange yourself by thinking that it's pointless or stupid to reward yourself for all the little things that you're supposed to do. That couldn't be farther from the truth. Are you really going to make yourself wait until something huge happens to celebrate? And does something huge happen every day? Probably not. But the kind of wins I talk about can and often do. And from what I see, they are an absolute necessity to getting yourself out of the emotional ditch of whatever ails you and into a better attitude and a better way of living. Based on the feedback I get, this regular practice of celebrating wins is changing lives for the better. So what's it going to be for you today? What are you going to celebrate? Maybe you've begun to develop an acceptance practice and you're extending a little grace to yourself instead of poisonous negativity. That's definitely a win. Perhaps you've taken the risk to see yourself more clearly and you're pleasantly surprised with what you've discovered. That's an amazing win. Maybe you received a compliment from someone that you barely know who appreciates what you shared with them because it really helped them. That's an awesome win. You get the point. Celebrate all of them, big and small. And none of this half-hearted celebrating. You've got to mean it. You've got to exaggerate your emotions. Yes, wow, awesome. You want your acknowledgement and your celebration to register in your neurology with the power to move you and shift your state. Many of us need a higher level of stimulation or intensity for things to register. So if that's you, give it to yourself and exaggerate your celebration so that you can actually feel it and have it benefit you. And listen, you're not broken or defective or less than. You're you. You have gifts and talents that you may not think much of, like you're really great at decorating your home, or you have a great sense of humor, or you bring a smile to people's faces when they see you, because those talents aren't paying the bills. I get it. And yet these are things that are really great about you, and they need to be appreciated by you. You are a precious human being whose value is a given, because I'm not talking about you as the human doing that most of society views you as. And you may be missing some skills that are making your life very difficult right now, yet skills can be learned. So please know that I'm not making light of your struggles or unhappiness, not at all. I want you to know that there are answers to your struggles. You may need to make some changes, and you may be in the very early stages of making those changes. If you're willing to be a student of your own life and develop a deeper understanding of yourself and how you're put together, and offer yourself a lot of compassion and patience, plus the time, effort, and energy that it's going to take to make the necessary changes, then these things can happen for you. It can. I know this is true because my students are learning skills that they've been missing for most of their life. And it's amazing to share in the transformation of their thinking and behaviors and their aha moments. Please, don't let yourself be one of the 80% of people who don't ever make it to the more permanent change, or even the 80% who want to change but never actually end up making the changes that they want for many different reasons. There's training and support that's available to you to ensure, to the best of my ability, that you don't become one of the 80% who don't make it. Rather, you're one of the 20% who do. That's about it for today's episode. I know it's a longer episode than I typically do, but there was a lot I wanted to share with you about inhibiting behavioral, thinking, and emotional flow, and a little of how you can start to develop them. I've really missed being here with you, and once again, it just couldn't be helped. I cherish the emails and the posts that you send me, letting me know how much my show helps you and means to you. It means a lot to me to know that your life is getting a little bit better every time we get together. Listening to every podcast episode is a small action step and something that you can do to help you move your life forward, one episode at a time, if you take action on the action steps that I include for you. If you just listen and hear the value, but you don't take action, you won't gain the value that's there for you. Remember, for things to change for the better for you, you have to change. You have to take action, which means that you need to do your very best every day to do something that'll lead you in the direction of your destination. I'd love to see your name on the Adventures in Achievement form so I can reach out to you right away, learn about your challenges and goals, and see if this program is a good fit for you to take advantage of. Time doesn't stand still, and I hope that you won't either. Act now, and let's chat. If you like what I'm doing here on the show, please leave a review on Apple Podcasts or Stitcher or Google Play or YouTube or wherever you're listening from, and share this show with your community. Ratings and reviews are extremely helpful, and they're greatly appreciated. The greater the number of reviews, the higher the ranking, and the easier it will be for other people to find this show, people who could really use this information as well. It helps me in my mission to make sure that all adults with focus and follow-through and self-management or executive function challenges have the information and skills to help them live a happier, more productive, and wildly successful life. That's the driving force behind this show and the expanded content of the Adventures in Achievement program. I realized that working solely with people one-to-one would never allow me to reach the millions of you who need what I've learned and can benefit from it now. If you each share this show with just one person, so many more people could benefit. Are you willing to do that? I hope so. Or perhaps rate the show, even if you don't write a review. I would be grateful for whatever it is that you're willing to do that helps me bring benefit to greater numbers of people. Thank you in advance for your kindness. Part of what I love about the growing community of Adventures in Achievement is the support that members are receiving from one another. Years ago, I conceived of something I called the ADD Squad. The idea for the ADD Squad was an outgrowth of my growing up years watching the TV show Little House on the Prairie, where it didn't seem to matter whose barn burned down. The town rallied and raised a new barn so that family could be okay. I've always felt that the world might be a much better place if we viewed each other that way. In other words, seeing the needs of others and reaching out as a community to help one another because we can, rather than just thinking of our own needs. In the case of my online program, The reaching out has been the sharing of knowledge and support and time to help one another, and it's amazing to be part of. We are not alone in this life of ours. We are all interconnected in such unique and mysterious ways, and we can see that even more so by developing our executive function skills and strategies. If you don't want to have to remember to look for new episodes, just subscribe, and the newest episode will be in your feed as soon as it's released. Thanks for listening. Until the next time, bye for now.
Thanks for your undivided attention. If you're eager to make positive changes in your life, head over to drbarbaracohen.com to see how Dr. B can help you today. Whether you love making changes with community support in a group environment or prefer one-to-one coaching or psychotherapy, you'll find all the information you need to get started at drbarbaracohen.com.